So the question I have to pose to you today is, how are we feeling about the prospect of an infant being stabbed with an ice pick? Not definitely being stabbed with an ice pick, just the prospect, the possibility of that happening, all within the context of a fiction novel. You know, it's all fake, it's all good. If you're like, nah, then you know what? We'll find something for you next time. But this go round, that's what we're doing. If you're like, I can have my fiction novel with a side of maybe baby being stabbed, then welcome, let's do it. Hello, my name is Leah. This is my channel, Dirty Little Literate, where I like to talk about books that are disturbing, disgusting, etc., what have you. This book is definitely a disturbing one. This was a viewer recommendation. I believe the viewer's username is like Cool Thanks One, and you know, I would also like to relay my little cool thanks back because I really liked this one. I thought this was a good one. The book is Piercing by Ryu Murakami. What a good book. It's falling apart, and that's not my doing. This is the library's book, okay? So this book was translated from Japanese into English. We have our main character, Kawashima Masayuki. So Kawashima lives with his wife and his newborn baby. And this man is not considering stabbing his baby with an ice pick because he's annoyed at having a baby. He doesn't want a baby. The baby's crying too much. None of the above. He loves this baby, let me tell you. But for the past 10 nights, he is standing over his baby's crib with an ice pick because he's like, damn, that just sounds like something that just sounds so good and nice and fun. Is stabbing my baby with an ice pick? Question mark. So that does sound pretty random, but we get a little bit of context about where this desire is coming from. So I will say Kawashima and his wife, Yoko, they have allegedly a great relationship. Allegedly, he loves her so much and is so happy, and he just can't believe he snagged her. And 10 days ago, they were watching a movie in which an ice pick was used as a weapon. And as this happened, he started getting all panicky and all like, and she's like, well, it's fine, it's fine. And she somehow calmed his nerves, and all of a sudden, like, he's like, you know what, it is fine, fucking ice picks. And he wants you to know that he tells his wife everything. He wanted her to know all about his very traumatic childhood and all the bad things he's ever done, with the exception of telling her that one time he stabbed that one woman with an ice pick. So him getting weird about the ice pick in the movie is not because, you know, he just has a weird reaction to ice picks, period. He has a weird reaction to ice picks because, you know, it hits a little close to home. So let's get you some ice pick context. So we find out that when he was younger, he was in a relationship with a woman. It was a very toxic relationship on both ends, and I think that they were both violent toward each other, although, and again, this is from his perspective, this is what he's saying, but he was making it sound like she was more violent towards him and very, very verbally abusive. And one day he had just had enough of the verbal abuse, and they weren't even actually interacting the moment before he stabbed her with an ice pick. She was just in the shower. Like, she'd just been mean to him that day, but she'd probably been just as mean many other days. And he's like, you know what? Just had it. But he also kind of goes into this dissociative state, and he doesn't even fully remember anything. But he just went up to his girl in the shower and just like, boop, in the gut. And she actually did not die. She ended up going to the hospital. There was never any like police involvement. It seems like she didn't really want to report him. I don't know if maybe because, you know, she had her kind of own stuff that she was doing that maybe she didn't really want them getting in her business about. But she did like come back to the house and get all her shit and stuff. So it wasn't like that was the absolute last time they ever interacted. But clearly she also wasn't like, oh my God, if I'm even around him again, he's gonna murder me. It was just kind of like a, oh, you know, maybe this is how bad relationships kind of go sometimes, so now I'm moving out kind of thing is sort of the vibe that I am being given of how all that ended. But he has definitely sat with this for years since it happened, and seeing that movie with his wife really brought shit back to the surface. So we have these 10 days every night standing by the crib. We've got the ice pick. The wife doesn't know. The wife does not know that her husband is dealing with this inner turmoil. So one day Kawashima gets this idea that makes him feel so much better, so relieved, because he felt horrible about the fact that he wanted to do this, because he doesn't want his baby to die. He wants this family with Yoko. And so he's like, hey, I think I won't have to stab my baby with an ice pick if I just stab a woman with an ice pick instead. Silly me, why didn't I think about this before? So he becomes obsessed with this idea. But it's not just like, oh, I want to do that, I'm just gonna go to town. No, he is a planner. I kind of wonder if he's a Virgo. As a fellow Virgo, if I did murder someone, there's gonna be like spreadsheets planning shit out, but then there's not, because one of the notes in my spreadsheet is probably gonna be like, don't make a spreadsheet about how you're gonna murder someone. But he has this journal that he is writing pages and pages of notes. He is considering every single thing under the sun that will allow him to get away with this. He's thinking he's gonna go with a sex worker. He's considering what age he wants them to be, where he should meet them. He's really getting into the details of it. He's trying to figure out how he could throw police off his scent. So he's like, okay, you know, some people will do a disguise, but I don't want to do anything like that that's going to attract a ton of attention. I just want to do something small. Like maybe if he just has like a slight limp or something to that effect, where it's something that if people are going to recall him, maybe they might notice it, and so then police might start looking for someone with a mild limp, something like that. So he's really planning many things in this way. And so he tells his wife that he is going to be taking vacation for work. I guess his job mandates that he has vacation every so often, which he never takes. So he tells his wife he's going to be staying at a hotel in a different area. And this area is connected to the average Japanese salaryman, and that is the demographic for the job he's going to be doing soon. His job, it's kind of like advertising. He selects images to, I suppose, advertise things that the images have nothing to do with the product that he's advertising. He's like, you know what, my next product, it's targeting the average salaryman, and I just don't know enough about the average salaryman, so I'm gonna go to this hotel that be popping with salarymen and get to know, you know, who I'm selling to. And she totally is like, yeah, for sure. She doesn't question it at all. And he's never lied to her before, which is kind of crazy too. Like, never lied, but we're gonna start off the first lie with how you're covering up this murder. I'm gonna go ahead and say, I do think you're lying if you don't tell your partner you stabbed someone with an ice pick, but I also understand there are a lot of people out there who are like, but did she ask him if he'd ever stabbed someone with an ice pick? To which I say, I don't know, he doesn't tell us that. So anyways, he is planning on going to this hotel, and he's like scoped out a bunch of different hotels. He's like, I'm gonna go to the one that seems like the busiest, the most chaotic, where their, you know, service isn't great. They're like not as likely to even remember anyone because they're too overwhelmed. He picks that hotel. And even before he is planning on enacting his plan, he decides to have a sex worker come into his hotel and give him an erotic massage, because he is still kind of trying to get the vibe of, you know, what your average experience is with a sex worker, because that's not something he normally engages in. So he just is trying to be very prepared. So this is, I guess, his like Virgo way of preparing, is getting this erotic massage. And to be clear, I don't know if he's a Virgo. I'm just putting that on him, okay? So he gets this massage. He's learning about the sex worker trade, and he finally plans a day and time where he is getting a sex worker who he does indeed intend on killing. And let me just tell you, the sex worker that he is going to be meeting, you know, you cannot plan for everything, and he certainly could not have planned for this woman. So at this point in the story, we actually start to get some of the book from the perspective of this sex worker who is going to be meeting Kawashima. and her name is Chiaki. And when we are introduced to Chiaki, apparently she has been sleeping for like, I think 3 days straight. She has been taking halcyon pills, and that shit is knocking her out. She's trying to be unconscious for days, and I guess she's kind of having a rough time. Apparently this thing happens where she will start to lose her sex drive, and it makes her very anxious and depressed. And when she notices her sex drive is basically non-existent, that's alarming to her, because normally she has a high sex drive, and she has noticed in the past that a low sex drive is the first sign that something bad is about to happen. And the bad thing that is about to happen is she enters into these weird periods of time that are also like kind of like a dissociative state. She's doing some weird things that I will elaborate on more, but it's just clear, like mental health wise, she's not doing so great. So one thing I want to back up and share about, I guess, both of them. So Kawashima was abused by his mom to an absurd extent. She was extremely abusive. It was really bad. He was constantly in pain. And the types of things she's doing, it's not just like your traditional abuse of like just like hitting, punching, slapping, kicking. Like she's doing like weird shit, like holding needles up to his eyeballs, and just all of it's really bad. She didn't abuse his sibling, just him, which makes it even sadder. I guess he reminded her of his dad, and his dad's no longer in the picture, and she didn't like that he reminded her of him. So he really had a very horrible childhood, and eventually he was put into like a foster care type situation, and I think it was more maybe like a group home type of environment. And the group home that he grew up in for a number of years, the children were like the most abused of the abused. They had extreme behavioral problems as a result of the abuse that they suffered from. And so, you know, we understand that what's going on with him is very much connected to what he endured at the hands of his mother. Now, let's go back to Chiaki. Chiaki also had a very horrible childhood. Her father would sexually abuse her constantly. And like, you know, it gets pretty descriptive about it, and it's just really kind of gross to read about. And she eventually ended up telling her mom, and her dad, he was always super, super nice to her before this. I mean, with the exception, obviously, of the sexual abuse, but like his attitude towards her was like he was trying to be very kind. And once she told her mom what happened, he was so mean to her from there on out, and said she was making up disgusting lies, blah, blah, blah. I mean, everything that you would expect, but her mom did not leave him. And so she stayed in this horrible situation. So she also has a lot of trauma, and both of them endured the trauma through the use of kind of like dissociating and trying to disconnect from what was happening. So that is something that has stuck around into their adult lives. Chiaki ends up meeting Kawashima, and what's so interesting about their interactions is they really do not correctly interpret each other's behaviors and what the other person is saying. It's so interesting because they will say something and you'll read what one character is thinking and what the other is thinking. They're just so not on the same page, and I'll get more into that in a moment. But the way it initially goes, she's trying to be all sexy, and he actually laughs in her face. I think he thinks it's kind of embarrassing. He's like, oh my God, somebody probably told her once that this is like what men want, and embarrassing because, I don't know, she just looks kind of stupid, which is super fucked up. But anyways, she's really embarrassed when this happens. And she decides to go to the bathroom, and when he's interacting with her, he notices like her eyes be looking glazed over. It's almost like she's not even talking to him. Like seems like she's only like partially there. And then he becomes really concerned because she is in the bathroom for almost an hour. And he's just getting kind of nervous and uncomfortable because he's never done this before. And so anything not going exactly to plan is just not working for his Virgo ass. And so, you know, at first, like, he'd ask, like, everything okay in there? And she'd be like, yeah, I'll be out soon. And then eventually she just stops responding. So he eventually is like, okay, I'm coming in. He opens the door, and homegirl has a knife and she is stabbing her own thigh and just like cutting chunks out, and she's smiling all the while. She's just having a great old time. And he's like, what the actual fuck is happening? And Kawashima pretty quickly realizes from their interaction and what he's seeing now that she's exhibiting a lot of kind of the behaviors, mannerisms that a lot of the children that he grew up in the group home with, that they would exhibit. So he also is realizing like, oh fuck, I guess she's also kind of one of us who had like the bad childhood. And what's so weird is one of the things that allowed him to kind of justify murdering a woman with an ice pick is he was like, I'm doing this for all of us who were abused by our parents, like we're taking back our power. But it's like, okay, but you're taking back your power and using it against someone that is supposedly in the same boat with you that you're acting like you're doing this for. So obviously it's not really a logical thought process. He's just trying to figure out how he can justify this. So because obviously he has history interacting with other people who have dealt with trauma, he's actually pretty strategic in how he reacts to this. He knows that if he says like, oh, I'm here to help you, I wouldn't hurt you, like that might actually set her off, because people always be saying that and then they switch up on you. And he kind of knows just approaching her in any way is probably not going to be a great idea. So he actually ends up pretending to make a call to the hospital, and he had seen her ID and saw her real name, because obviously the name she's using as a sex worker is not her real name. He sees her real name on her ID, and he thinks like the use of her name, like rather than talking directly to her because it makes it seem like he has an agenda, if he just lets her overhear him using her name, like, which is him totally having an agenda. And honestly, it works. And the fact that he knows her name, in her mind, all of a sudden, she's like, oh, do I know him? Oh, I probably know him. She's wondering, oh, is this the man who usually takes me to the hospital? And at first we're confused, like, what man is normally taking you to the hospital? So she has a very long history of self-harm, and a lot of the time she's done it in front of men that she's been dating, and the men, you know, kind of understandably have pretty intense reactions to you, you know, carving open your leg. And so all of these men usually dip once this happens. And, you know, before the men leave, I think a lot of the time maybe they're like calling the police or whoever to come get her to take her to the hospital, but they're definitely not taking her themselves. And at one point she actually acknowledges she knows there was never a man who would take her to the hospital, but it hurt her feelings that all of these men left her, so she kind of pretended that there was one, like a man who was always kind of trying to like save the day and take care of her. And this man, knowing her name and calling a hospital, she's like, oh my god, it's him. So she's kind of like shifting in and out of delusions, because on one hand she knows that's not real, but then on the other hand she seems to like very much believe like, oh my god, this must be the guy. And there's a lot of back and forth during this whole hotel room scene. At one point, she runs out of the room completely naked. He's able to bring her back in. She bites his finger so fucking hard. And amazingly, he's super calm throughout that and is like still trying to comfort her, because I think the thing is, he is now assuming that like, okay, at this very moment in time, it's not gonna work for me to stab her with an ice pick, because this whole thing has not gone to plan, and now my fingerprints are all over everything, and I was not intending for that to happen. And you know, this is just a weird situation. I'm probably not going to be able to kill her, but like, let's still play it by ear, but like maybe probably not. So he's just trying to not do anything that's like going to get him in trouble. And so he's saying, okay, yeah, I will take you to the hospital. At one point, they are separated for a minute or two. I don't know if he's like in the bathroom or like going to grab the knife so that she doesn't like use it again. Whatever it is, they're separated for like just a very short period of time. but he had brought his notebook with him that has all of his notes about how to get away with this murder and every single thing he wants to do. And he becomes convinced that she must have read the notebook. And he is so upset by this. He's like, well, now I have to kill her because she read the notes. And he keeps like going back and forth of like, okay, well, so is she gonna tell the people at the hospital? She's pretending like everything is normal and she's pretending she's not scared of me, but she probably has to pretend, you know? So he's just trying to analyze everything she says and does and like take it as evidence that she definitely read the notebook. And this is like so awkward because once she starts to think that he's the man that normally saves her and takes her to the hospital, she starts having all these super affectionate, warm feelings towards him. And like, you know, when they're like going to the taxi to go to the hospital, she's like holding his arm and kind of trying to be a little cuddly. And he has no idea why she's doing this, but she's like made some comments about like, oh, I know that, you know, you don't normally use sex workers or things to that effect, or like, you're staying in a different hotel, are you? And these are all things that had she read the notebook, she would know. But she's thinking them because she thinks like, oh no, normally he doesn't use sex workers. He just made sure to make an appointment with me specifically because he wanted to see if I was okay, you know? And so she's just like, in La La Land, getting all excited about him. Everything she's saying, he's interpreting as like, oh, she definitely read the notebook. And for reference, she did not read the notebook. So he takes her to the hospital. He waits outside of the hospital for her because, again, he's like trying to figure out like, what did she say to them, you know? And she's like, oh my God, this man waited outside in the freezing ice cold for me. This is the nicest thing anyone's ever done for me. She's taking everything he's doing as like, oh my God, he loves me, when really he's like trying to figure out like, can I get away with murdering you? So after the hospital, which she doesn't tell the doctors anything, she says like she fell on her bike, and they can see she has all these wounds from other self-harm attempts and they're really busy, so they don't really worry about it too much. She invites Kawashima back to her house, and he's still trying to figure out like, okay, what's her angle? And he thinks she's maybe already talked to the police and they're gonna like stage something and bust him, but like they can't bust him yet because he hasn't done anything. So he's, you would think he would just leave, but because she's read the notebook, like, I don't know, what if the police haven't been involved yet and he can kill her before she says anything? But because she knows, he can't just leave her alive. So he's just vacillating back and forth quite a bit about what he should be doing. But anyway, they go back to her house. She tries seducing him. He's still really confused, but then comes to the realization, oh, you know what? This girl is super suicidal. And once she read the notebook, she wants me to kill her because she doesn't want to be alive. That is now the conclusion that he's drawing. So, you know, he is not down for her advances, and she's just really confused. Like, I just can't figure this guy out either. Neither of them can figure each other out, and they just don't understand each other at all. And she has this tendency to kind of go into these rages for little things, and she knows that no matter what, eventually that's going to happen. And then if she gets mad at him, then maybe he'll leave her. She doesn't know. She decides, you know what? I just need to drug him so he'll stay here and never leave me. So she puts halcyon tablets in his soup that she makes for him. And oh goodness, apparently she's done this with other men. She's drugged other men that she's been with, because please don't leave her. And so he consumes the soup with the halcyon. He ends up starting to feel like he is about to lose consciousness, but in kind of a crazy way where he's like, what the fuck is happening? He's so confused. And as he's confused, he starts saying, Yoko, help me, which is, you know, the name of his wife. And when she hears the name of another woman, she's like, what the fuck? What the actual F? So she grabs a can opener and hits him in the eye with it and like fucks up the eye bone, and she's just fucking this man up, okay? So he is now able to fight back. because this violence has woken him up a little bit. So it's kind of combating the effects of the drugs. Not completely. He's still having a hard time, but she's really small, so he's definitely able to easily overpower her. And the fact that the police aren't here at this time, he's like, okay, doesn't really seem like they're coming. I don't know. But he's like, you know what? Bitch is getting an ice pick in her fucking stomach, okay? He uses the rope from her bougie coffee machine to bind her wrists, and he grabs the ice pick. When she sees it, she's terrified. He's coming and he's about to do it. He is about to ice pick the shit out of her. And all the while he's saying weird stuff. So she realizes that there's something going on with him too. He's like dissociating. He's having memories from the past, and he's like acting like he's talking to his mom or whatever. They're both a mess, okay? And so as he's about to stab her, the drugs finally just overpower him and he passes the fuck out. Oh, goodness. Okay, so he's passed out and it's been like 10 hours and she's figuring out what she wants to do, because despite the fact that he was going to kill her, she's thinking like, he's gonna leave and go to his wife and his daughter, and I'm gonna be alone and lonely, because even though she knows he was gonna kill her, the feelings that she felt when she believed that he was the man who like wanted to take her to the hospital and save her, she's like, those feelings were real, even if what it was based on wasn't real. like, and the fact that I could even like have those feelings, I don't want to like lose the possibility of having those feelings again and going back to being alone. So, you know, a little crazy. Once he passed out, she was able to kind of finagle out of, you know, the bindings that he'd put on her. He'd also gagged her. She was able to remove that. So one thing that I want to note, and, you know, for whatever reason, I guess this is kind of like a notable thing that they want to include when they first introduce you to her character. So she has one of her nipples pierced, and she did it herself. And she's very big on experiencing pain that she can control, that like she chooses, you know, everything her dad did to her, it felt like it was out of her hands, but like a piercing like that, you know, I made this choice and I endured it, so now I know that I'm stronger. So that's, you know, something that's important to her, is like her nipple piercing. So anyways, when Kawashima is just like passed out in her house, she's like, you know what? It's time to pierce the other nipple so that I can show myself that, you know, even after he leaves, that I'm stronger for all of this. So as she's about to pierce her nipple while he's still passed out on the floor, he actually finally wakes up and he's like, what are you doing? And she just doesn't even look at him. She just says, piercing, which is the title of the book. And that is how the book ends. So this book was less than 200 pages. This was a breeze. You could read this so quickly if this sounds like your cup of tea. And I really liked it because even though there are so many books under the sun about murderers and people with fucked up desires, like, you know, we get it. What I liked is the two characters both being broken, and like how they both kind of had the propensity to be both the victim and the perpetrator. So you really didn't know who was gonna come out of this alive. And honestly, I thought she was going to succeed in killing him, because like at one point it seemed definitely like she was thinking that was the route she was gonna go. But I guess she also had this history of like, you know, really doing fucked up shit to guys and then thinking that immediately after they'd all decide to be like, you know what, but no, we're gonna be together forever. So, you know, again, kind of delusional. But I think the piece also that I really liked was, you know, how they would say something and have completely different understandings of what that meant for the situation. I think just the complementary perspectives was kind of cool. And overall, yeah, I just really liked this one. I am curious to see how it would have unfolded, you know, after this ending scene, but I don't think it left you feeling like, oh my gosh, I was robbed of like answers. That's not how it felt. It really felt like their dynamic kind of played out, and there are a number of things that could happen after that, but we really got to kind of like know and understand who they were, and I don't know. I thought this one was really good. You know, I just love a book like this, one that you can power through because somehow you're finding the violence very palatable. What I'm so curious about is like, okay, so let's say he goes home after this, because I don't think either of them are gonna report each other to the police because they're both kind of buck wild and have done some stuff they don't want the cops to know about. So like, let's say he goes home, what's gonna happen with his baby? Is he really just gonna, you know, suck it up and not stab the baby with an ice pick? Is he gonna try to do this again with another woman now that he realizes you cannot plan for everything, and you know, he could be risking his own life by trying to do this again. So, you know, I always recommend books at the end of my video, like, oh, I think you should read it, after I've just told you every single thing that happened. That's not true. There's, you know, there's always stuff that happens that I don't mention. I can't mention everything. But, you know, if you are the type of person that can really like listen to everything that happens and still read the book, that's super cool. I love that. So yeah, go read this one. Also, I just want to say, I really don't like filming these videos without a filter because I can always see like dark circles under my eyes, but I'm starting to think like maybe I should never use a filter again. If you see the dark circles, you're like, dang, she's just up all night reading. What a commitment to the literature. So I think I'm just gonna keep rolling with it. I don't know. But thank you so much for joining me on this one. Again, thanks. Cool, thanks one. Appreciate the recommendation. Y'all keep recommending books. You guys have some good recs. I love it. All right, I will see you next time. Bye.